Tim Adams with you again, and this is actually going to be a really great hangout because we have a special guest. We have Bradley, who likes to go by Brad. And he works at Audinate, a solutions developer, and they have created an digital audio networking topology called Dante, or networking solution. Let's try that. And he's going to give us a fairly brief overview, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So with that, Brad, I will welcome you to the Hangout, and tell me, what is Dante? What makes it so exciting?
Well, Dante is an audio over IP solution, and when I say solution, I mean that it's a lot more than just a collection of underlying technologies and standards and so forth. It is based upon standard technologies used in IT infrastructure, IP networking. But what we do is we develop the complete solution for manufacturers of audio gear. So you've probably seen it out there in a lot of gear from Yamaha, new stuff from Mackie. Almost everyone now is producing a Dante-enabled option card or product. And what we develop is a complete suite of hardware and software that we sell to manufacturers and that we provide to our end users that enable them to put audio on a very large scale onto a standard computer network. So you don't need any special gear beyond the Dante jacks that are on the back of the products to get audio happening there. We provide all the tools that a user needs to manage the product, that is to connect the channels, manage clocks, manage sample rates, all those things we provide so that when you go from manufacturer to manufacturer, whether you're buying a mixer from manufacturer A and a power amp from manufacturer B, you get the same tool set. Everything works just the same going from one to another. And the charm of it really is that opposed to analog methodologies, a product like Dante can do massively high channel counts over a huge number of devices where the whole thing is controlled in software. So if you want to change what's happening, you don't have to go and pull wires. You just simply click on your screen and you can change where your audio is going, change what's happening. And you can do it on an extreme scale so that we support up to 512 channels per node and no limit of channels on the network. And that's at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit depth. So uncompressed audio at a massive scale. So that's what we do. In order to make this work, we provide the entire solution stack to manufacturers. And as they adopt it, they get along not only a technology that's tested, tried, and proven, but that works with all the others. Because we're providing the same exact solution type to everybody, whether they're making a little tiny one-channel device like a speaker endpoint, or a massive 128-channel device that might be a PCIe card or a huge mixer.
Excellent. Now, I do kind of have a dog in the fight. I went to a Dante training event, I guess is what I would call it, up in Bellevue, Washington a couple of weeks ago, and I was just amazed. I've got like 5 pages of notes from that day alone, and I like to think of myself as fairly technical, but I'm not an IT pro. And what I liked is that Dante has been kind of developed to more or less be as complex as you want it to be. Would that be a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. When we started developing this years ago, and the team that developed it is down in Australia, very much the objective was to turn this into a plug-and-play application as much as you could possibly do it, so that it would simply speak in the language that an audio person needed to get their job done without requiring someone to get under the hood and start becoming an IT expert. While there are some extreme cases where you're going to need some consultation for certain types of things on the very large scale, very complex scale, in general, well over 95% of the time, you don't need anything. You can just plug it into a switch you bought off the shelf at Best Buy and be on your way.
As long as it's a gigabit.
It should be gigabit. Dante will work at lower channel counts on 100 megabit per second switches, but at this point in time, in 2015, there's just no point. Gigabit switches are cheap, and the additional bandwidth that gigabit provides simply erases a whole host of potential problems.
Excellent. Now, I know that you have a PowerPoint standing by. Is that
I,
something that you
I
wanted to
do.
utilize?
Well, we could. It goes a bit into what I was describing and goes into a little bit more technical detail about what Dante is as a solution. And I guess what I'm trying to make clear about Dante is that it's not just a standard in the sense of being a document on a piece of paper that people might do what they will with. It is really a complete stack of hardware and software that make it work as seamlessly as it does. And I'm happy to use that PowerPoint and show you what's going on. So I'll move into my screen share mode.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going
And
for it.
while you're doing that, one of the things I wanted to cover is that one of the things that really makes Dante really awesome is auto discover. And what that means is as soon as you plug a Dante-enabled device into a compatible network, let's say, it will go out and it will find any other Dante-enabled hardware automatically
That's
for
right.
you,
That's
which
right.
is
That's a key thing that it does right out of the box.
all right. So it looks like you're up. Why don't you walk us through this?
Sure. So just to take you a bit through this, uh, forgive me if there's a bit of marketing speak in here. I will try to brush past that. We've designed this thing, as I was alluding to earlier, to make this thing really easy to install and use, and also just as important for the members of the audio community that are the manufacturers, making the stuff that we all want to use, make it easy to integrate. That's part of the secret sauce, is making sure that our manufacturers, our partners, get the complete toolkit, no guesswork. They can put it in, it's going to work. So really what our company is a bunch of networking experts. So what we've done is we've taken standards that are used in computer networking and use them to develop this complete solution. And we've devoted ourselves to this particular thing of doing media networking. And one of the things that makes it work so well is that it is completely based on standards, which is why it works over totally standard network gear, unlike some other solutions that may require you to buy some special router, some special switches. We don't. This thing works on the same stuff that you use on any computer network. I'm going to kind of go past some of these since these are from another event. It is absolutely plug and play. It uses any common IT topology, and in the world of IT, you get a lot of different ways that people connect computers together. You can use a star topology, you can use a distributed star, you can do all these different ways of doing it, and Dante works with all of them. We've also made a great effort to make sure that our products are available in as many different products, many different partners as we can get, because we know that the success of a solution like this and the experience that people have is really dependent upon making sure that there's plenty of product out there that people can use and that they can plug into and build complete systems. So we work hard to make sure that that happens. On the technical end, what are we doing here? If you go back in time just a little bit and remember the way that, say, voice over IP worked, say, 10 years ago or a little more, it was flaky. You got a lot of dropouts. You got a lot of missed sync and so forth. And it seemed like just getting a phone call was kind of hard. Well, that got ironed out. It got better and better, and we've leveraged the technologies that were related to that to produce a product that is far beyond anything that someone would have imagined back then. One of the key things is we use the 1588 precision time protocol, which allows us to synchronize our devices so that every device on a Dante network, no matter how many they are, know exactly what time it is. And I mean that on a profound level. They agree about time to within 1 microsecond of one another, which guarantees that everybody is playing exactly at the same time down to the sample rate. In fact, way, way closer than just a sample rate. We also then support all the common audio sample rates from 44.1 up to 192, and we can even do 384 for some cases. We support all the common things in broadcast like drift and so forth, so that we can accommodate that and not have the system lose sync at all. And the way that we do audio over this network really eliminates jitter pretty much out of the equation. It really can't even happen because the way we're doing clocking works in a fundamentally different way than earlier solutions like AES ever did. The other thing that a lot of people worried about with older audio over IP solutions was latency. How much time does it take for audio to get across the digital network? Well, any digital processing device always has some amount of time, and if you've ever worked with digital workstations on your computer, you know this. The round trip is something greater than 0. And so we've taken care to make sure that Dante's contribution to latency is minimal. So the first thing about it is that in our case, Dante latency is always deterministic, which means it's fixed. It doesn't vary. Just because one device is way, way out there and another device is really close, that doesn't mean anything. We make sure that the latency is 100% consistent between those two. And it can be as low as about 150 microseconds if you're dealing with a smaller network, just a couple of switch hops. And if you're doing a very large network, like 10 switch hops, and believe me, given that each switch has typically 24 ports or so, 10 switch hops is a lot. Then we can use a default value of 1 millisecond and be comfortable, and this means that that is the only latency in the system that you have to even think about. You can even do different latencies at the same time. You can have certain segments of the system literally be at a different point in time than the others, and it will stay synchronized. We've made sure that this product works over a common IT infrastructure and that it uses the same tools that anybody involved in IT knows. So if you have a problem with a Dante network, you don't need an audio expert to fix it. You need someone who understands basic IT, which is really all over the place. So we use all the common underlying tools. So we do all of our addressing automatically. There's no static addressing in Dante unless you desperately want it, but you don't need it. We use DHCP to do automatic addressing. We do all of our automatic device discovery using multicast DNS, another standard that allows that to happen extremely effectively. And when we discover devices, we don't just get their names, we get everything about them so that we know exactly how the connections can be managed. We also provide the DNS SD standard, which is another network standard, so that you can show friendly names on the network and not be bothered with funky numbers, IP addresses, or things like that. You see English, and you can label everything the way you want. We make sure that we leverage quality of service, which is an element of IT systems that allows you to dictate that certain packets have a high time priority, and we do that on our clock sync and audio packets to ensure that even if there's other traffic on the network, which is fine with us, we don't care if there's other traffic on the network, that we get pushed to the front of the line all the time. And we support the two fundamental types of transport on a network to make sure that we get the most efficiency and that you don't have to think about it. We do unicast and multicast transport, which means that you really don't need to set up VLANs and things like that most any of the time. Unicast is a way that I can easily send a signal to very specific designated points. It's a one-to-one kind of connection. You can imagine a cable going between the two if you want to. Multicast is a form of broadcast that allows me to send one signal efficiently to many endpoints. So if you want to do a huge split and send the same signal out to 4, 8, 16 endpoints, multicast will do that with tremendous efficiency. And all of this is supported by the most common stuff you can go buy. So again, no special switches are required. The IT managers can use their HP, their Cisco switches, whatever they like. It's all going to work. As Tim was saying, yep, we try and simplify all this. For all the tech talk I just gave you, we try to make sure that the way it looks on the surface, the way it looks when you're using it, is just simple. It's just the devices you want to use and your connections. So we auto-discover all our devices as soon as they're plugged into the network. You don't need to do any setup ahead of time. When you want to make a connection, you just literally click right at the junction of the two signals you want to connect. They're connected. That's it. We use friendly device and channel names. We were saying earlier we use DNS SD to do that. And this allows you to edit the names of your devices, edit the names of all the individual channels so that you can have it look like plain English or whatever language you speak when you're connecting your stuff. And really importantly, all of this configuration stuff is stored in the individual devices. So this means that if you take a Dante network, you get it all working, it's great. Now you power it down, you wrap up all the cables, you put it in the truck and you go somewhere else, you plug it back in, boom, everything comes back connected exactly like it was before. We also support glitch-free redundancy. So in this case, you can have two networks running side by side. And the way it looks to you is just like one network. You don't have to do any configuration for this. You just simply plug in additional cables and switches, and the audio is flowing simultaneously over both the main and the redundant network. If somebody trips over a cord on the main, disconnects power somewhere, you won't even hear a pop. The redundant network just simply carries right on and gets the job done for you. The way that it looks, too, is, all this talk would mean nothing if you didn't have something you could get your hands on, is to have software like this. Dante Controller is the main thing you live in when you have a Dante system. And it's a cross-platform piece of software that we give away for free. Works with every Dante device made from anybody. And it automatically displays your entire network, all the devices on it. Lets you do all the routing, lets you set up the device names, any clock adjustments you want to make, sample rate changes, tools so that you can see what's going on, you can see what your latency really is, you can see what your network health is, and so forth. It's all right there in a really simple piece of software that runs on Windows or Mac. And this is a really exciting bit that no one else is doing. Because we use totally standard IP, that's the language that every computer speaks. So that means that your computer, your Mac or your PC is not only a way to control the network, it's a full participant on the network. So you can add software like Dante Virtual Sound Card, which we sell for a very low price. And now any audio applications on your Mac or PC are available on the network. So you can get up to 64 channels bidirectional, that's 64 by 64, going right through the Ethernet jack you already have on the side of your PC or your Mac. And you can use it then to record, you can play out, you can run it through effects processing, whatever you've got on your machine, you can do that with Dante Virtual Sound Card. You don't need a hardware sound card connected to the thing at all. You've already got an Ethernet jack. That's good enough. Here's a little testimony to it. We've really tried to make sure that the system just works, that it's really easy to set up, that it's visually obvious what's going on, and that it just works. And Jim Atkins had a great quote about that. It just works. It finds itself. It finds all its buddies, and it just goes. That's what we do. So that's my presentation on that. You can ask me any other questions. I love talking about this stuff.
Thanks, Brad. That was more than I was hoping for, so thank you for that. One of the really cool things that I love about Dante is that you have one cable for signal control and other data.
Right.
And I actually have an example here that is a picture that I took at the event in Bellevue.
Mm-hmm. I missed that one, by the way. I was going to go.
And this, what we're seeing here, just for those of you that don't understand this, is something that is like way beyond anything I could have ever imagined would be possible. This is a speaker, and we're looking at the back of it, obviously. And what we're not seeing is up here, we're not seeing any physical audio cable connections. What we're seeing instead is a single connection that is coming from a Dante network that is an output. And that's where your audio signal is coming into the speaker. And so
it could be coming out too.
It could be coming out, yes. So this just blew my mind. They had an entire sound system there that was working very well. It sounded awesome. And there were no audio cables at all. It was all just category cable. And I would assume it was like probably shielded Cat 6 or something like that. But
it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
No, it can be regular Cat 5e.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
So, I mean, for me, I'm part of a mobile church, and looking at what we just saw, a speaker with just an RJ45 in, I'm all of a sudden not burdened with multi-channel copper snakes, for example. I've got maybe an I/O device, an input-output device up at the front, a stage box that is Dante enabled, and I use Dante to get the signal from the stage back to my console through a switch, and maybe the switch is on the stage, and then out of the switch I've got two cables going out to one each to each speaker. And once I get that configured once, I label everything, pack it up in the trailer every week, bring it out, set it up, and as Brad said, all the configuration information is stored on each device. And so it remembers where it is on the network. And so all of a sudden, it's just easy. It's just plug and play at that point. And I know that there are manufacturers out there that have microphones that have built-in Dante. I know that Shure has some. I don't remember if Audio Technica is on board yet,
Yeah,
but
they do.
okay,
Audio Technica's got a few.
excellent. So, and then how many manufacturers do you guys have currently?
Right now we have about 200 manufacturers signed up, just over 200. And we have about roughly 400 products on the market now. And on the roadmap, we expect that number to hit around 700 by the year's end.
Excellent. I'm referencing my notes over here. So I did want to talk about timing because I think that's one of the more confusing parts of any digital audio networking or topology that's out there. And maybe you could, without diving too deep, maybe you could talk about why is timing important? Why is it the number one priority in Dante as far as the signal that's going across the network?
Timing is really important because the human ear is really, really sensitive to any small changes in time. Generally speaking, by the time you have an identical sound repeated by about 20 milliseconds, the ear starts to really hear that as two separate events. So when you're managing live sound, you want to have control over the time that things are going out to the speakers. Very often you want to do that deliberately. Like you might put a deliberate delay into some speakers to create the proper field because we're accounting for distance. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that in traditional, when I say traditional computer networking in the 90s and the early 2000s really was not aware of time. It was the job of a TCP/IP network was to get packets from point A to point B and make sure that it did it very completely and very accurately, but the exact time did not matter. It was fast enough. But when you come to real-time media like audio or video, then the exact order of things really, really matters. Every packet, every sample, every audio sample has to get there in time to be played out. And so we put a lot of time into that to make sure that not only was the total amount of time that we occupied very, very low, the latency, but critically that every single device was totally in sync so that when they trade audio, when they communicate with each other, everybody agrees down to the sample level what is happening, which means that you can do a lot of direct manipulation of the signal and arrangement of things without having to worry that it's going to sound bad, that there's going to be dropouts, there's going to be problems with that. So that's really one reason it's been really key, is to make sure that the system is completely time aligned, that whatever delays are in there, you've put them there deliberately.
Yeah, they're intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the case studies that was discussed in Bellevue at the event was the Yamaha 125th year anniversary concert, and pretty big event from how it was described. And Dante was used to route from the report 178 total inputs out to 5 discrete mixed positions. So you had front of house, you had monitors for the musicians, you had a record A, you had a backup record B, and then you had a live stream output.
Sure.
And Dante can handle that, no problem.
No, that's no problem at all.
Right.
That's
If
not
you
even a
run out of
large number of
bandwidth, you
channels.
yeah, exactly. You add a switch, essentially, if you need more bandwidth. But to do that with analog copper, I don't even want to think about that. I mean, that just hurts my head, honestly, and my back, because I know how much that weighs. I
Right.
mean,
not only is copper going to be really, really heavy, but a lot of the fundamental operations are going to be a big pain, like doing splits. I want to send the same, let's say, group of 8 channels. I want to send it to this recording area. I want to send it over to this monitor guy, whatever. If I'm doing that in analog, how am I going to do it? I've got to have a bunch of gear that I can split and prevent ground problems with. So everything's got to be transformer isolated and things like that to eliminate problems. Whereas in a system like this, it's just clicking a mouse on multiple destinations and saying I'm done, and finish eating your sandwich.
Exactly. And with analog copper, you get that delay issue. You get that latency, I should say, that the cable introduces in order to transmit the signal, right?
There would be very little in analog, but there will be an introduction of noise and certainly the effects on an analog signal of all that capacitance and load will result, in a time delay, but that's also manifest as a frequency response change. So in analog, you've got a couple of things that are degrading that simply don't happen in the digital domain at all. So
Right.
You'd have uncontrolled time delay, and you'd have uncontrolled frequency response degradation and noise. And not to mention that if one analog cable in a snake goes bad, you know how much fun finding that is.
Oh yeah.
And that is not even possible in a Dante system.
Exactly. I mean, cable goes bad, you replace it. No big deal. It's Cat 5e.
Right. About 10 cents a foot. Right.
Right. Precisely. Another case study. I'm hesitant to mention who it was, but let's just say they're a tech company in the Northwest. They have production studios on their campus, and they were shooting an interview with the CEO. He'd just taken over the reins, as it were, and they were away from the production studios. But they've got an actually pretty extensive, redundant Dante network set up with a number of VLANs. You know who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about. They know networking, those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the microphone that the guy was wearing was being routed back to the production studio. At that point, it was being introduced into the intercom system and sent back. And so the guy who was giving the presentation was saying, he plugged into a wall plate intercom station so that he could hear over the intercom what the guy was saying that was being interviewed. It was 1 fiber mile from the shooting location to the studio, and another fiber mile obviously back. So 2 miles, no latency at all.
Right. Well, there was some, but it was so small you couldn't hear it, and whatever it was, you could have read it right off the Dante software. It would have told you because it's fixed. And so, yeah.
Not enough latency to be concerned about.
No, we allow some larger latencies if you desperately need it for something, but the default latencies are completely inaudible that we use.
Exactly. And so I guess my point is Dante is being used on some pretty large-scale events and by some pretty well-known manufacturers who obviously see the value in it. And I think they also kind of see this convergence between AV and networking that it almost feels inevitable. And it's nice to see a company kind of see that coming and get into it early and provide a solution that really, really works. Honestly, I mean, I've used it. I've plugged in a laptop to it and had it up and running in 5 minutes.
It just works.
Routing signal from a video file on the laptop out to Persona speakers. Again, the only standard audio interface was, I believe, the speakers were being run off of the new Persona's rack mount mixer. And that was simply so they could control the levels.
Right.
But that's it.
That's it, exactly, and that's really what we're all about. Is that we've strived to make a really complete solution that has all the tools that you need and that others need to go get their job done without having to learn everything new. It is really new technology, and we're fully aware that's a bit scary to a lot of people. That you don't necessarily understand just how it works, and so we really put a lot of time into trying to make sure that what you see is directly related to what you need to get done, and it will work. And that's the way all good technology really should work. I don't even know what's going on in the engine of my car when I hit the gas exactly. I have an idea, but it works.
And we're very thankful that it
Oh,
works.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And the brakes in the tranny too.
Absolutely. So really quickly, because I don't want to hold you too long. What's next? What are you guys working on that you can tell us about?
What we're working on that I can tell you about is some new software we have that's we're going to be releasing later this year, Dante Via. And Via is an extension of what I was talking about before with the virtual sound card. The virtual sound card software has been tremendously popular because it allows you to, just like you were saying, connect your laptop straight up to a system, and you can put audio in, you can take audio off. This is fantastic. But one thing that it can't do is run all by itself. The virtual sound card needs a Dante piece of hardware out there to do the clocking. Well, we've overcome that difficulty now. And so now we're going to be releasing some new software that allows you to create a Dante network on the fly, just going PC to Mac or Mac to PC or whatever way you want. You don't need any other hardware. You just plug them in to a network switch, fire up the software, and now you can send audio to and from any workstations you want with the same kind of performance you'd expect from Dante. And it allows you to grab any devices that are plugged in, for example, that way, and instantly put them on the network. So if you've got a USB mic and you wanted to use it over a public address system or hook it up in some other way, now all you have to do with Via is you just make that device a Dante device through your laptop, and voila, it's on the network and it behaves just like every other. And you can do the same with applications. I can actually grab an application and I can say this application is now a transmitter channel on the Dante network. If you want to hear my iTunes, you just tune right into these channels, and it'll work the same way.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do want to jump back really quickly because there are probably some people who are watching that are
Sure.
that are thinking, we've invested in our sound system right now, and this all sounds great, but
Sure.
it sounds like I need all new equipment. Is that true?
Some is. There's a lot of gear for which there are option cards available. The Yamaha stuff is a prime example. A lot of the Allen and Heath is too, where they provide Dante in a few forms, but one of them is an option card that you can just add into a system like that, and get that functionality. But it is true, yeah, that for some people it is going to mean some new gear, at least things like stage boxes and endpoints. But that's something that we're keenly aware of, and that's why we really promote the use of those option cards too, because it really helps. Some manufacturers have made the leap all the way, like the new Yamaha products now are just baking Dante right in. We started as an option card with them, but they're so pleased they're just now making it standard. Doesn't have to be added. So if you got analog gear, it's true. You'd have to have some sort of digital analog converter that was speaking Dante, and they're out there. But if you've got digital mixers and so forth, then check to see if there's an option card available from whatever manufacturer you like to interface with Dante. And then, like I said, the great thing is, after that, we don't care what brand it is. The Dante system always works the same. And that's something that's pretty unique because a few companies have developed some digital transport systems, but they're totally within that one company. So you can only buy products from them, and then the system works, and anybody else, sorry, Charlie. But ours is not like that. We do the same thing for everybody.
Right. And in a lot of ways, I'm looking at Dante as equivalent, not from a official announced published standard standpoint, but it's very similar to what DMX did for lighting control, in
Right.
that it really just standardized everything.
Right, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox about it, really, but looking at the history of standards, there's really two kinds in the world. There's what's called de jure standards. Those are the ones written up by committees, and then there's de facto, which is what people really do. And the world is full of both of them, and a lot of things that we really use in the world are the result of exactly things like you're describing, like DMX. great case in point. They had the solution everybody liked, and so that became what we think of as the standard. There were other possible outcomes, but that's not the way it went. And very much, with Dante, we're based upon standards, but in terms of what gets used for a solution, we want to be those people. We want to make sure everybody's really happy with what we're making, and that it really fulfills everybody's needs, all the way from users like yourself up to people who have to design big systems, installers and integrators, and the manufacturers who have to make it. Everybody's got to be happy with what they're getting.
Absolutely. So, real quick in closing, you guys can be found online at audinate.com.
That's right.
And I'll put the link down in the description for those of you on YouTube. And you guys got a couple big shows coming up.
Yeah, we're going to be, the big one really is Infocom down in Orlando this year. We will be doing some speaking at NAB, which is coming right up this next week. I won't be there for that one. But that one we're going to be presenting with some others because we are introducing our support for the AES-67 standard, which is an interoperability standard. It allows like base level connectivity between several other audio over IP solutions, so that Dante can communicate with them, they can communicate with Dante and with each other too. Keep it in mind that this doesn't mean that those other devices are like Dante devices. It just means that they have a way to connect. It's a little more rudimentary, but it can get the job done if you need it done. And so we're excited to see that come around, because it's another thing that helps break down barriers and generally keep promoting this idea of using computer networks for audio and then video, simply because they're just such remarkably effective and robust tools. We've put a lot of effort into developing that technology over the last 20 years or more, as computers have become so important. And there's a payoff in that for everybody, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I see Dante as just something that I'm going to use in the future when I'm speccing things out for my church clients. Looks like Paul has a question.
Sure.
Gonna turn this mic on.
It's true. I was just curious. Clearly, this is a great choice for huge systems, but what about a really, really small system? I'm sure that someday there would be a solution that would be like the little analog boards you get from Behringer or something like that. Do you have something that would be 8 inputs, just really bare bones getting started? Are there manufacturers doing that?
At this point, there's not that many down at the lower end. I would concur, and partly it has to do with the cost structures of the companies doing it, and where there's a real pain point being addressed. We went for the big ones first because that was where we could really clearly see that the pain that they experienced of dealing with large channel counts was something we could really provide a solution for. And at the lower numbers, it's true, it's less of a problem to go deal with. I've worked as a musician on stages a lot myself, and Lord knows I have plugged into a whole lot of 6-channel PV mixers because that's what was there. And well, that's going to be the case for a while yet. But as costs continue to come down and it becomes less and less appealing to maintain 2 separate types of technologies for these companies, I expect to see them start to shift, because really there's nothing about it that only the demands scale. And in fact, we now make Dante chipsets that are about the size of your fingernail that are low channel count. They're like little 4-channel chips. That run on very, very low power. And we did that to address the endpoint market. Like, what are you going to fit into a microphone? Well, it's got to be some little tiny chip. Well, how about into a speaker where it's only 1 channel it needs to receive? Well, it doesn't need a whole lot of our other stuff. It just needs the 1 channel. And so we can now do that very cost effectively. And I expect to see that have a ripple effect over time. And I would love to see that going on too, because it's, even on the small scale, you're still plagued with analog problems, and there's still some real benefit you can get out of it by being in a purely digital system. Not the least of which is things like changing the way that monitors work. Right now, in-ear monitors are something of a luxury. And most stage gigs, you can't do it. It's just too much. Past some point, it's worth it to get everybody outfitted. But once everything is digitally networked, that becomes a much easier thing to do, just right out of the box without having to build a completely separate system. I'd love to see things like that coming around. As a musician myself, that would just be heavenly to see little inexpensive systems that supported that kind of a playback system for the musicians. It'd be great.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about kind of a similar situation in which you have kind of a private network topology or audio over IP, if you will, topology for Aviom, for Hearback, for
Right.
Listen, or not
Right.
Listen, sorry, it's hearing assisted, but
Yeah. Hey, they're coming up next. I just want to see old folks walking down the street carrying long Ethernet cables. That's what I'm looking for.
yeah, there you go, there you go. Well, what I'm seeing, at least, I'm gonna take a stab at answering Paul's question as well. I think it was Xtron was actually showing a wall plate that was just a single microphone input, but it was Dante enabled on the back side.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that, I think, are very beneficial for the smaller churches and the smaller systems. And what I see Dante doing for smaller churches is not necessarily the same feature set, if you will, for the larger setups. What I'm seeing is it really opens the doors towards being able to very simply and very easily doing live translation,
Right.
routing signal splits between mixers. Because let's say a church wants to do a single camera live stream out to the internet. I get asked about that all the time. Well, it's great and everything to get a feed off of the front of house soundboard, but that's being mixed for the environment the live environment. It's not being mixed for broadcast. And so it wouldn't be that hard to get a Dante-enabled solution in there where you could send those signals out through a small 8-channel input-output device, or even using virtual sound card or Via to get sound into the computer out to the live stream, and that's where you marry the audio and video together.
Right, and what you're getting to, Tim, is that even at the small scale, like a 16-channel board, that sort of a thing, that it isn't the right way to look at it is the system as a whole. It's not just the one product that stands alone, but one of the biggest things that audio networking really solves at that simple low level, I mean, set aside the fact that the audio quality is great and stuff like that, is the ability to route audio wherever you want. Splits are a non-issue. How many would you like? You can send as many as you want to as many places to do all the sorts of processing you want. You could be sending one thing to a dedicated recorder, to a backup recorder, to a broadcast truck. You have total control over where everything goes. And so, what would have been insanely difficult and expensive a little while ago now is easy to imagine, easy to put together.
Well, even I get asked quite often, actually, by churches that say, well, we want to be able to be working in the kitchen preparing food for potluck, let's say, after the service, and we have no idea when the service is ending. Well, run a line down there, put a speaker that's Dante enabled, boom, you're done.
Boom, that's right. That's exactly right.
And cat cable is so easy to run. It's much easier than analog copper.
And furthermore, if in terms of the overall value to the church, or for that matter, any installation, this can all ride on top of existing network infrastructure. It does not have to be a dedicated audio network at all. You can completely share Dante audio with people's Facebook updates and everything else. Doesn't matter. So that's a huge benefit right there, is that there isn't a need necessarily to lay in redundant infrastructure. You can have shared infrastructure, and that works just fine.
Exactly. Absolutely. All right. Any more questions before we let Brad kind of get on with his evening and get back to his family?
I have a rehearsal.
Oh, okay. Or to his rehearsal.
True.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for your time. I know this was last second working through Josh, but hey, you know what? I
It
I'm
was a
just
blast.
so glad that you were able to join us and kind of really give us that personal overview and that personal touch that only a representative of the developer can actually give us.
Well, I'm really happy to do it. I had a real fun time, and if anybody has any questions or follow-up, you can reach me. I'll give out my email address. I guess can I type it in the chat? How does it work?
Yeah, you can type it in the chat, and I will. You could actually create another lower third if you wanted to.
Oh, I could, couldn't I? I could
You
get crazy
could.
that way. Ooh, ooh, ooh. And I got to
So
remember how to do it. Yeah.
yeah,
Here,
absolutely.
I'm gonna. There I am. That's right. Here, I'm gonna change my thing there so you can
Yeah, your
see it.
tagline.
My tagline is just gonna be my email address now.
There you go.
It's just we keep it simple. It's brad.price@automate.com.
Yeah, that
That
totally works.
we keep it simple, and it's just fine. Please enter a preset title. Oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to. to. Oh, I love technology.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so much fun.
it is. Now if I toggle this and this, do I come back? There you go.
There you go.
Oh, I'm having
So
fun.
so there is. Yeah, you're learning a new tool.
I am. I haven't really used it like this before. So there's my address. If you have any questions, feel free to send them my way. If I can't answer them, I promise not to make something up. I'll send it to someone who does.
Well, again, I want to thank you, and I have to say, is it just me, or do you look like one of the Mythbusters?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I know what you're talking about. I think I know the guy. I'm not that guy.
You're not that guy.
I'm not that guy.
Yeah, you look like Adam to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say that.
One of my kids said that to me recently too. So I
It
now
must
need
be
to
true.
test it. It must be true. Follow up on that one.
There you go. Well, thank you
Okay.
again, and for those of you that are watching, we'll be back next week with another exciting topic. Keep an eye out in the Church Tech communities on Google+, and that's where the announcements are made. And if you'd like to be a participant, just let me know, and we'll make sure you're on the invite list. Until next time,